afternoon, everyone. I guess good evening, everyone. Welcome to our CCDA Happy Hour webinar. Cheers, everybody. I am happy to introduce you to this fabulous team that has joined us and given us of their time for our first ConducTED talks virtually. For those of you who have been involved in CCDA events before, you know that we've started doing some TED Talks at some of our conferences, and they've been immensely popular. So you're going to get to hear 12 minutes from some fabulous experts on various topics. And so I am pleased to introduce you to our first TED Talk with Angelina Fitzhugh from JL Stanford Middle School in Palo Alto, and Susie Martone from Greene Middle School in Palo Alto. And they are talking with us about SIP ships, shelter-in-place relationships. Susie, Angelina, thanks for being here.
Thank you. All right. So I'm Angelina and I teach at JLS and at Gunn High School.
And I'm Susie and I teach at Greene Middle School and we're in Palo Alto.
Yeah. So yeah, our entire thing, as soon as this whole shelter in place went in, we were mostly concerned with how to maintain the relationship with our students because, as you know, that's like the biggest part of our job. And so, Susie, can we go forward?
Yeah, yep.
That's okay. Sorry. So we came up with this idea with our colleague, Jessie Denny, who's at our third middle school in Palo Alto, to perform one of the songs that the three of us had done in a trio. And then we were like, wait, what if we did this every week? And we roped in our other colleague and friend, Andrew Hathaway, into being our bass voice. And so we'll play you a little clip of one of the things that we've done.
Time. Get fresh air at least once a day from other folks. Stay 6 feet away. Check your courses on Schoology. Works optional, you see, but it's strongly recommended. We can't wait to sing.
So, as you can see, we're just, singing together and having fun.
And that one, that particular, we'll get to more of this later, but that particular one was actually a Kirby Shaw arrangement that we transposed so that the tenor lead was singable by women. And obviously we traded around who had the solo. So we just we took an existing arrangement and just kind of made it work. So yeah, the process, so we've kind of, honed our process over the last several weeks. The first thing we do is decide on a song. The song itself, it could be just like inspiration that hits, maybe we're taking a walk outside listening to music and we're like, oh wait, this one would work. Or maybe a friend or a relative sends a suggestion. It's just sort of divine intervention sometimes, what song seems to make sense to do that week. Then we kind of have this group text going. As you can see, there's a screenshot of our group text and some of our brainstorming there. Since we've been gone, I can sleep in for the first time, right? Deciding who's gonna sing what part, right? So we have a collaborative Google Doc where we work on the lyrics, transcribe or modify arrangements if necessary, and we either you have to use a guide track to record while on the app that we're using. So we have a few different ways to do that, and then we all take turns collaborating on this app and posting every Friday.
So obviously Google Drive we're pretty familiar with, but when we take our original lyrics, we put them on one side and then we put the parody on the other, so we can make sure that everybody's lining up like number of syllables and rhymes like that. And we'll highlight something and put a comment, oh, what about such and such? Or Susie's the queen of the lyrics, like she's just a queen at them, and I just recommend random things here and there. It's just not my strength.
And we have a shared folder on our shared drive where we put the sheet music PDF, a recording, and the lyrics sheet, right? So that's all together and it's organized and we all have access to it. Flat.io, I've been using this to do original arrangements because after a while, of course, we got ambitious. We started to include classroom instruments. Watch out, Jimmy Fallon and the Roots. And I already had a flat.io account, so I like that one. And also it integrates really well into Google Docs and Google Drive and stuff. So that's the one that I had been familiar with. There is also Noteflight, which is also a free online notation tool. And I just like it because you can log into it from anywhere. And actually it's become I started using it a few years ago, and a lot of the features have really been developed quite well over the last several years. And you can share, and it has those opportunities for all that cloud-based stuff that we love, right? So yeah, I've been using Flat.
The app that we use for recording is called Acapella. It's been around for, I think, about 5 or 6 years. I know I've been using it for classroom projects for a long time now. It is an only iOS app. There's a Android one that's not quite the same, Pick, Play, Post, but we use Acapella.
And Android, unfortunately, the Android one is not compatible with the iOS one. Yeah.
So you can do all of the collaboration things without having the premium account. And I put a YouTube video on how to do that. That's in the slides, which we'll have CCDA post on the website. 3 of us have the pro subscription and 1 of us does not. So it's great because it does all of that editing for you. It's a little tricky when you first get started to make sure you know how to run everything and line everything up and get the volumes, everything right. But it's a great app and it's pretty fun to use.
It has actually a lot of settings for like an equalizer and like the gain you can set up. Like there's actually a lot of settings once you get into it. It's pretty powerful for just a
free app,
iOS app, yeah. GarageBand and iMovie. So we've also used these tools. GarageBand is great for making tracks, right? You can record one part at a time so that you can have a guide track to sing along to so that everybody stays together, right? So recording one part at a time. We also used a GarageBand to record something remotely. Like I recorded a part and then I sent the entire project to Angelina and then she recorded a part on top of it. So she sang harmony. We just did an audio project that way. You have to send the whole project file though. You can't just send an audio file. It's like this big, huge file. It's like a zip file and you like upload it. You can't just email it. So just a word to the wise for that. And then iMovie, figuring that out too for like putting lyrics over videos and stuff like that. It's actually pretty user friendly and there's like 1,000 tutorials on YouTube. So yay.
Then our original plan was just to distribute it to our students using our learning management system of Schoology. But then we started sharing them with our friends on, Facebook and whatnot. And it really was, a big fun thing for our friends to see as well. And then I noticed that my high school students, they're way more in touch with Instagram than they are with Schoology because, school. And so we decided to have a YouTube channel and a Instagram presence, I guess, so that we could make sure that all the kids got to see it. And it was just really fun. So any of these things that you click on when you get the project, it'll take you to that place so you can check out our channels.
Oh, there it is. I was like, where's the YouTube icon? For some reason. All right. All right. And here is the whole point of doing this, right? Yeah, sure, it's a fun project for us, but really, we have students that are logging on to our Schoology page every Friday just to find this video. So, everybody that I talk to, every teacher I talk to is saying, oh my gosh, there's kids that just are not engaging at all, right? And yes, realistically, of course, we are also struggling with that. It's not like every single kid is doing all of their online work for us. However, I will say though that it is a big encouragement for them to check this page every Friday. And you can see here, they write comments on these and they're like, we had one that was actually on the local news. And so we put our clip of the local news spot on our YouTube channel, and they're all like, "You're famous!" And so, you know, the kids, the kids are really, you know, really excited about it and really into it, and they've been thanking us for it, and, you know, responding really positively this whole time. So, Angelina, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, I mean, that's the whole reason, is we were really concerned, especially middle school. They don't choose a class, they choose a teacher. And we wanted to make sure that they wanted to keep choosing us, so.
Yeah, because of course, you know, this into the unknown here, going into the fall, we don't know really what our classes are going to look like. And you know, our traditional ways of like being a cheerleader and like, you know, putting on a dog and pony show in person is really not necessarily going to be the way that we can do things. So this is a little bit of a dog and pony show online.
So, and if you have any questions or you want to chat with us about any of the things that we've done, we've put our email addresses there, and yeah, that's it.
Fantastic, ladies. Thank you so much. And we'll do, we're going to move on to our second TED Talk now, but we'll have some time at the end to do some questions if anyone would like. Susie and Angelina have inspired me. Some colleagues and I are working on our very own project through the Acapella app because of their work. So thank you for the inspiration, ladies. I am still scared to do it, but we're putting it together this week. So I'll be calling you for questions I might have. It's now my pleasure to introduce you all to Kemp Smeal. I'm so grateful to have Kemp with us here today. He's a psychotherapist and counselor, as well as a musician. He's an organist and pianist down in Long Beach, California. And I thought it would be, actually with Eliza Rubinstein's inspiration, we thought it would be good to hear from a mental health professional. I think many of us are struggling right now with our own mental health in this really tough time, and certainly we have students or singers in our choirs, whether they be church or community as well, who are struggling. And right now I just wanted to hear from somebody who does this for a living. So Kemp, thank you for being with us.
You're very welcome, and thank you for inviting me, Jeff. It's a pleasure to be with all of you this afternoon. I hope you all are well and healthy. I am, and I'm grateful for that, and I'm honored to be here with you during this unprecedented, challenging time in all of our lives. As musicians, you know, we're all quite familiar with community and collaboration and problem solving, supporting each other during times of struggle and celebrating successes and accomplishments in our creative endeavors. Our community of musicians throughout the nation and the world find comfort and connection and consolation and inspiration through events just like the one we're doing today. Listen to these words: uncertainty, anxiety, ambiguity, disorientation, lack of certainty, fear, dissonance of data and reported information, trapped, isolated, lonely, unending, angering, sad, stuck, static, pent-up energy. These words describe in varying degrees what many people, including me, and I'm sure you, and I know all my clients that I'm working with these days. And we've been feeling these and continue to experience these since the early part of March. COVID-19, the unwelcomed and unexpected, uninvited guest, has created disorientation and disruption, transition and transformation. And it's experienced not only by us in this country, but all over the world, as you know. I want to tell you a story. In April 2015, a young, strong, life-loving guy was lying in an ICU bed at Keck Hospital, USC, here in Southern California, dealing with his own type of COVID-19 issues. It was a crisis. Trapped in the ICU by his life-threatening medical problem, he was restricted to stay in the hospital for what could be more than 2 to 3 months. The hospital was his stay-at-home shelter, not ordered by some government official, but by his team of highly skilled and experienced medical professionals. He could not leave the hospital, and for about 2.5 weeks, he was instructed he could not even get out of bed or move his legs or sit up more than at a 30-degree angle, due to the fact that there was a medical piece of equipment called a balloon pump that was placed inside of him to keep his heart beating and to help his heart rest. His independent, dynamic, productive life, as he knew it, was on pause. The new temporary norm was living life with multiple intravenous bags hanging from the IV tree above his right side, heart monitor leads stuck to his chest, wires tangled like spaghetti draped over his chest and arms, bells, alarms, sounds of the ICU ringing throughout the ICU unit day and night. Nurses were serving up oral medications to be taken throughout the day, along with the phlebotomist poking his arms for blood during the night and early morning hours. The doctors were working on his case and trying to figure out what was wrong with him and what is the problem and what direction do we need to go. And they were talking with him about the possibility of the treatment options being considered. Life dramatically changed the day his heart began to fail the month before, which was March 2015. Uncertainty about the future began to loom large. It felt like the size of a full blood moon on a cool winter evening. Would he live? Would he die? Would he ever be able to do the things and be with the people he loved again? How would he manage the financial aspects of his own personal economy while in the hospital? If he survived, would his life be like, what would his life be like on the other side of this unsolicited experience that seemed to have no specific date of resolution or end date? Being in the transitional space between being healthy and becoming healthy again was opaque and unknown and uncertain. On March 26, 2015, the patient medically qualified to be on the heart transplant list, priority 1A status. He was told by members of his medical team to be prepared to wait for a donor heart a minimum of 2 to 3 months. Uncertainty suddenly became compounded by the waiting period. For receiving a new heart took a while. How will he deal with the waiting period and associated feelings of uncertainty? Or said another way, more clearly and more directly to all of you listening today, how will I deal with the feelings of uncertainty, anxiety, and fear? You see, this is my real life story. This actually happened to me in 2015. It's a narrative of disorientation, disruption, transition, transformation, and ultimately resilience. 5 weeks ago, the COVID-19 crisis was intensifying with stay-at-home orders, businesses closing, social distancing practices, and so on. And you know it all because you've been living it even as I have. I began to feel the collective energy of uncertainty build within the local, state, and national levels of our communities. I observed my own feelings of uncertainty, disorientation, and loss becoming even more present within me. One day, as I was musing about what was happening, I realized these feelings that I had inside were exactly what I experienced 5 years ago when I was at Keck Hospital waiting for a donor heart. It got me thinking, during that waiting period 5 years ago, how did I deal with the feelings of uncertainty, anxiety, fear, loneliness, boredom, thoughts, and feelings about life, death, and the future? How did I navigate being disoriented, having my life and health disrupted, being thrown into a major life transition, and ultimately being transformed as a result of my heart transplant? What strategies did I choose to create that spirit of resilience while suffering? First of all, I developed a cognitive strategy using the mantra, Kemp, just relax into this. In other words, try to be with the experience and not fight it. I practiced that mental intervention when I was in the hospital during the waiting period for my heart, but also I used it in the earlier days of the crisis. Another mental strategy I employed was being mindful of keeping my mental perspective in an observing position with a spirit of curiosity. For example, I was curious about the technology of the hospital and asked questions about the machines, the medications, and procedures I was experiencing and observing. I also employed a social strategy where what I used was to be interactive with my nurses by relaxing into my relational self. staying curious about people and asking questions about their lives and work as a doctor or a nurse. I had a nurse who worked with me during the night shift for 6 or 7 nights in a row. We had some meaningful conversations, and one night, the person came out to me as transgender, male to female person. I was honored she felt comfortable enough with me to open up and come out to me. Other relational interactions were with the medical staff caring for me, visitors, and of course my family, friends, and colleagues. This kept me engaged in an observing, curious mindset that helped me relax into my situation with an active participation in my healthcare crisis and recovery work. I experienced, of course, anxiety and fear at times, but more often I held on to the mantra, Kemp, just relax into the situation and stay focused on your goals and aspirations. My goals and aspirations for when I get out of the hospital, not if I get out of the hospital. So in other words, I held the idea of relaxing into the here and now while keeping an active, positive mindset about my future after my heart transplant and recovery period. Authors Richard Citrin and Alan Weiss say, resilience requires that we focus on how to recover from negative, tragic, and traumatic events. Resilience places us back on a positive path after the brief detour of a setback. So what I want to leave with you all today from a emotional, psychological perspective are 7 strategies to help you navigate the COVID-19 event as it continues to unfold, and even other life traumas that disorient, disrupt, and cause anxiety, fear, uncertainty, and emotional, psychological distress in your lives. So strategy number 1, perhaps you'll even know some of these, and perhaps some of these will be new to you, but strategy number 1, take some deep breaths during the day. We're all used, as musicians, we're all used to the notion of breathing, right? On so many different levels, whether we're an instrumentalist or a singer or a conductor, or even an organist, pianist, we breathe as we play. So it's important to take deep breaths during the day. This will help bring you into the here and now, even if for a few minutes. And pay attention to the breath going in and going out. Do 5 to 10 breaths at a time or more if you feel comfortable. And repeat this as needed. Being in the here and now can help reduce anxiety, stress, and fear in the moment. Strategy number 2, develop some mantras to repeat to yourself anytime you need to reduce anxiety, stress, and self-soothe. For example, some of the ones I used: relax into this. Just sit with this for now. This is only temporary. I've got this. I am a powerful, creative, intelligent person. I can figure this out. Strategy number 3, stay in an observing position. For example, notice the detail on a flower or on a person or on a tree or an environment that you are in. Notice the sounds you hear around you. Watch how people interact with each other. Notice your heartbeat and the sound of your own breathing. Strategy number 4, stay in a spirit of curiosity. I love this one. For example, ask questions, wonder about things. I wonder, for example, like, what is going on with that person? Or I wonder how my life will be 4 months from now. I wonder how so-and-so in my choir is doing today, or somebody in my family. I'm curious what current changes in our society will become part of the fabric of our lives after COVID-19. Strategy number 5, be socially connected in ways that are meaningful to you. For example, initiate in-person conversations, which we're all kind of doing this anyway through the mediums of email and text, phone calls, Zoom, FaceTime, etc. Connect with the grocery workers by asking them how they're holding up during this challenging time, and even thank them for their work and their service and putting themselves on the line. Strategy 6, protect yourself from negative information, negative energy, negative people, etc. Be intentional about what and who you expose yourself to. I notice the more this COVID thing goes on, I watch less news each day. And not that I watched a lot before, but I find exposing myself less to it actually helps me feel better right now. And lastly, Strategy number 7, set goals for your post-COVID-19 personal and professional life. Life will go on. Think expansive, large, creative, and beautiful. We're beginning to transition out of the crisis stage of COVID-19 in some respects and into what appears to be some recovery phase. In other words, it's kind of like the first movement of the symphony is ending and we're getting into the second movement. We don't know where it's going to go, of course, but the storm will pass. So we must fight on with expanding resilience and relax into our lives with an active appreciation for goodness, blessings, and care that we experience each day. We must practice, 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 which all of us know what that means in our professional lives. But we must practice giving love and kindness to each other from deep inside of our heart while we continue to stay on top of the beat of our lives each day. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kemp. I appreciate you sharing your story, and I just took notes on all 7 of those ideas. Those are fantastic.
Thank you.
And I appreciate, Kemp is not one of our choral conductor members, and we're just so grateful for his time, especially for being willing, sight unseen, to kind of talk us through this. So thank you again, Kemp.
You're welcome.
Next TED Talk comes from Stacey Kikkawa, who is at Fullerton Union High School. Stacey did this TED Talk, just last summer, Stacey, at Echo? Am I right?
I think it was 2 summers ago. Two summers ago. Yeah.
Got it. And this is how Match.com made me a better conductor.
Hi, everyone. So I'm obviously here for the levity part. And I know that the title can be a little bit controversial, but I guarantee you it's a clean presentation, I promise. So this was my online dating profile. And I was online dating for 7 years between eHarmony and Coffee Meets Bagel and Match.com. And as I reached year 7, I started to become defeated and decided that I needed and I wanted to sign my spinster card. But as I was reflecting on the dating process, after a date of someone who turned out to be a mini stalker, some questions came up. Do I need to change? What do I need to change? And what am I doing wrong? Many of the answers I came up with sounded like my everyday professional life. And I started making connections with lessons I was learning about myself and how that linked back to me as a conductor. It sounds weird and it's a little funny, but I'm here to share those lessons with you. So here are the 5 lessons. Catfishing, first dates, in quotes, long-term relationship versus short-term, being brave, and having confidence. So let's start with catfishing, or how you are representing yourself in words and in visuals. So let's talk about presentation in the profile. You saw my profile. When you're writing a profile, you want to write out something that stands out because people can go through dozens of profiles in a day depending on what apps they're on or how many dating apps they're on. And all of the written profiles can start sounding the same after a while, or can be ignored if they're too lengthy, or be ignored if they're too short or too casual with emojis and text language, or they're too formal and they sound intimidating. For me personally, I wanted to see if a person could write a sentence with punctuation. That's hard to find, by the way. The correct profile has to say not too much, not too little, and needs to be written to the audience that you want. So I'm relating writing a profile to how we lecture our choirs from the podium. If we say too much or too little, we get swiped left. So are you speaking to your singers with the correct amount of information and with the correct tone to reach the type of audience that you want? I think this is incredibly relevant right now, because think about it. Did you change the way that you speak to your singers during social distancing or distance learning? Do your singers recognize the conductor who they have come to trust with their hobby and their passion through all of these posts and videos? Just food for thought. So what is catfishing? Catfishing is the act of someone who pretends to be someone else, especially on the internet. My favorite was always when somebody labeled their profession as entrepreneur, which translated to Lyft driver who upsells thrift store finds on eBay. If you're laughing, that's good, because it actually happened to me. But catfishing could be as simple as saying on your profile that you don't smoke, you don't want to date a smoker, but then you use a picture of you smoking a cigar. So when we're in rehearsals, we want to truthfully represent ourselves to the best of our ability. If we are conducting in chop-like motions and we're not getting a legato sound, we're catfishing our singers. If we are conducting a beautiful line and maybe more with word text, but they miss beat one, whose fault is that? So we need to make sure that we don't catfish our singers and then punish them or become disappointed in them for falling for it. So really, are you presenting what you're looking for? How does that translate to the present now that we're off the podium? You have to make sure that you're reading your Google Classroom, your LMS posts, or your Facebook posts with fresh eyes. Are you really saying everything that you need to say? Are there things that you wouldn't usually say in rehearsal that you need to communicate right now? Everyone does it differently, and you have to make the right choice on how to represent yourself. Number 2, first dates. Obviously, first date is in quotes because if it was not, that'd be weird. But we always want to make a good first impression on a first date. My first date was always coffee. So why coffee? It was cheaper, and it was a quick getaway if things didn't go well. But if it did go well, then coffee leads into an actual meal. So every day, you should strive to make a positive first impression from the podium and now off the podium. You never know which one of your singers you're reaching today. I don't believe that we should depend on our laurels, reputations, or past relationships to create progress. I would encourage you to try to use your best self and your past experiences as tools in your rehearsal to reinforce but to not rely upon. So when you run a rehearsal, do you treat your singers like you're courting them on a first date? Or are you just there to rehearse and program robot singers to do what you want them to do when you want them to do it? We remind ourselves in our rehearsal or lesson plan that our singers want to feel like they are being valued. And good first dates always feel that way. But this is especially our job right now. We are all leaders of our community, whether we feel that way or not. So any idea that you come up with for your singers to feel valued will be greatly appreciated. It doesn't need to be groundbreaking, but it does need to be something. So when coffee goes well, is there dinner afterwards? If your rehearsal goes well, is there a larger incentive? This doesn't have to be an actual reward system, but after a rehearsal, you should feel like it's contributing to a larger goal. And I know that this is really difficult right now because we're at a point where we don't know where we're going, which leads to my next point, which is long-term relationships versus short-term. I think in the context of dating, this is self-explanatory. But what does it have to do with being a choral conductor? Think of it this way. When you're rehearsing, are you teaching or talking about concepts that are more long-term or short-term? So when we're talking about short-term fun or goals, we were talking about concerts and pretty much what all of us are experiencing right now. How do we take care of the now? When I wrote this originally 2 years ago, I was talking about how short-term goals are concert-oriented, where you have to have your performance calendar or season. So I asked, are your musical and performance concepts used and reinforced from fall to pops? Have you ever thought about your singers' four-year learning plan or their musical experience from their freshman year to their senior year? This is incredibly relevant right now because there's a real possibility that we can no longer think in these short-term goals. We have to think about the long term. So when I was dating, I had to define what was my definition of a long-term relationship. And it differed from people that I dated with. Some thought more than a month, more than a year. but what is your long-term relationship with your singers? Is it a full season? Is it 2 years? Is it 4 years? So what is their learning plan? Another thing, what is important to you in order to develop this long-term relationship? In online dating, you can create publish a list of makes and breaks. These are a list of things that you must have in a relationship and a list of hard no's. For example, my makes: artistry, loyalty, patience, and must love cats. My breaks were lying, cheating, arrogance, and intolerance. And it always surprised me how many men didn't make that list. So what is your list of makes and breaks? Is it musical literacy? Is it the choral orchestral musical experience? Is it being consistent in bringing a pencil every day? Is it feeling valued no matter what happens at festival? The answer is yes. And you are allowed to change your mind. So now during shelter in place, you have to reevaluate what your makes and breaks are. We are currently being surrounded by an overwhelming amount of ideas and resources. And I know that personally, I have felt guilty about seeing massive amount of posts of who is doing what and comparing it to what I'm not doing. But after doing a makes and breaks list in my head during this time, I realized what was still important to me and started shifting to new things that were important to me. So other people's lists don't have to be the same as yours, and that's okay. You have to make these choices and be clear to your singers on what's important to you in order to develop this long-term relationship now. And you will find that some people will not be able to work with your relationship terms. So don't be discouraged if things don't pan out the way you want them to. In order for a relationship to work out, there has to be consistent effort and courage to combat the emotions when things don't work out. It's a really harsh realization that dating is a risk. And even though you might do everything that you think is right, it just wasn't enough. So now what? Just like in any relationship, you need to discover which relationships are worth mending and saving. Are all singers worth saving? Maybe. Is it worth you losing yourself to save a relationship? That's up to you. From personal experience, it's not worth it. There's not one solution for every relationship problem, and the idea of saving everyone and being a hero doesn't work for every relationship. In current times, we are seeing this every single day. It's that singer who doesn't post on Facebook often, but their church rehearsal was the bright spot in their day. It's the student who is an average student who no longer communicates with you. It's the community choir singer who reaches out to you because you're the one that they trust to lead them in a time of crisis. Everybody's situation is different, and every relationship takes a different amount of energy. And then there are breakups. Breakups are hard, and some go better than others, and some are necessary. And sometimes you don't break up with them, they break up with you. This could be anything from singers to administrators to school districts and to communities. Which leads to my last point, is you need to always have confidence. Just because somebody breaks up with you or a relationship didn't work out doesn't mean it's the end. Getting up in front of a choir every day takes heart, spirit, and soul. Please be confident in who you are and what you bring, and be willing to keep putting yourself out there. But with something like online dating, there's constant rejection. With swiping and ignored messages and ghosting and actual breakups, it all can be really difficult. Right now, I'm being ghosted by so many of my singers. It's insane. And it's all one-way communication. But because they're not communicating with me, does that mean I'm doing the wrong thing? The only way we can be successful is if you have the courage and the confidence to keep on trying. Also, if something doesn't work out, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's something wrong with you and that you have to do a complete overhaul on your life. So keep in mind that self-evaluation and reflection is always good. And if you were in the wrong, self-improvement is the way to go. And nobody is perfect all the time. And this is what I say to my students almost every single week. It's not about the mistake. It's about the recovery. It's about trying again. It's about being vulnerable and consistently taking risks of offering our contribution to art and humanity. We as conductors need to be confident in who we are and what we bring to every rehearsal, every piece of music, every singer, and to every audience. So the moral of the story is that even after the guy who became a mini stalker, I kept trying this dating thing, and I found somebody. He plays the saxophone in the community concert band, so the music part is there. He is more Star Wars than Star Trek. That's okay. And more Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter. And we've been together since 2017, and we're engaged. And so it can work. You just have to keep on trying.
Mhm.
Say hi.
Hi.
Thanks, everyone.
Fantastic, Stacey. Thank you. Thanks for giving us some hope. And I think so much of that translates from your talk 2 years ago for being in the physical classroom with our students and with our singers, and certainly translates to now. So thank you for that. Finally, today on our TED Talk list is Chad Zullinger, and Chad is going to talk with us about collaboration and connecting, teaching and learning music with technology. Chad's the current vice president of CMEA. Thanks for being here, Chad.
Thank you, Jeffrey. It's great to see so many of choral colleagues that I have worked alongside with through the years here in the Bay Area. See, I'm in the Bay Area. Thank you for having me. And so one thing that stuck out from a few of the talks so far that I just want to impress upon. Here is yet another chapter where we're going to be talking about all of that deluge of information that's just proliferating our timelines across social media. But I thought, when Dr. Benson and I talked about, let's take some of that and frame some of these tools that I could share with you and how students that I work with use them. Why don't we frame it in such a way that it really is about collaboration and connection, right? And so when we think of it that way, we're really not, in some respects, we're really not talking about technology, right? Technology, and every time I do this, technology is, what I'm about to share with you is not about technology. It is not the end all, it's not the be all. We don't start with it and we don't end with it. It's about teaching and learning for our students using some cool technology that's available for us. And so that's why I want to start off this morning, what time zone am I in? This evening. And so, so let me find a screen to share here. I got a few screens to share with us. And so we're gonna choose, let's see here. We're gonna choose this one, and y'all should see kind of a website-y looking thing that welcomes you today. I will share this site out at the end, and we'll have it posted for materials. Everything I share today, let's see, will be available to you right after this. So, okay, so I wanted just to take a couple of tech pieces that we're all familiar with and share with you how I've used them with my students. And so I have students all the way from music major undergraduates all the way to middle school students. So and there's a lot of similarities. If we were to do our Venn diagrams, there's a lot of similarities, slight differences, but teaching and learning is there's more things in common than not. So I just wanted to go ahead and share. Let's see here. I'm going to come back here. So I want to go ahead and share. Let's see here. We're going to go to. All right. Share that. And so I have all these wonderful tabs open right now. Okay. And yeah, thank you for your patience here. Great. So we're going to start off with a Google Doc. And I had this idea from a class that I took in grad school. And so it's called a collaborative Google Doc. And I use this as a way to organize topics and ideas with the students, right? So it's not a piece that's generated necessarily by me. It's a document that, and I have the outline view open right here. So you can go ahead and see the stuff that I post, and then here are all the students and their responses. Right now you're looking at a college course, but I use this with my middle school students when they're collaborating on writing and creating their own music. And what's great about this is that, as you can see here on the side, you could very easily see the topics and the links. And so if you wonder how to get there, there's always this document outline. And you can go very quickly to places, and then you can review what everyone had to say about that particular topic. And so I like the word collaborative, right? Because using something that's very familiar with us, it's using it in kind of a unique way. So therefore, it's not about my ideas. It's not about my direction. It's about the power of the group and their ideas and how we move forward together as a learning community. Right, and again, I use this with all of my students in a variety of grades, and it's just great to kind of watch ideas germinate, and it's always there for us, right? And so one of the ways that the ideas off of this, I think it's down here, what kind of technology tools could we use to get to know people, and so I want to go ahead and share that with you, and so. This is a tool called Flipgrid, and so Flipgrid is I've been explaining this to people. Flipgrid is a video response tool that does all of the background and all of the heavy lifting in the background. You don't have to worry about it. All you do is you send the link out, right? And you post a topic, and then all of your students have an opportunity to answer you. Right, so this is one way. This is one way that I use Flipgrid. So I was on a call yesterday up in our northern coast section in California, and we have quite a bit rural students up in that general vicinity of California. And so a teacher had asked me, how can I look at students? I want them to send me examples of them playing. And I said, well, and her problem was, what's really hard is that some of the internet and the bandwidth in some of these students' homes is not strong enough. And I said, well, one of the ways that you could accomplish this is you could send out a Flipgrid link, right? And you can ask them what they need to do, and you can post some instructions, and then each of them can send you their own individual file, and you could watch them, right? And then on each one of these video responses, you can leave comments and send it right back to the student, right? And so what's really nice about Flipgrid in terms of working with our students that internet is an issue during this time is that it, like I said, it does all of that work behind the scenes, right? And you're just sending a link, they're just sending a link. There's no uploading videos, there's no downloading videos. There's a lot of uses for Flipgrid. When I was back in the Midwest about a year ago during the polar vortex of 2019, music teachers were using Flipgrid as a way to connect to their students while the schools were closed. As some people on the video conference today, some parts of the country don't have school for weather-related reasons, and Flipgrid was a really nice tool to use. So this is one way that I use Flipgrid, but you can use Flipgrid in a lot of different capacities. Most of these tools that I'm going to share with you today currently are all free. Flipgrid has been free, and they've boosted their time up to 10 minutes. So each one of these student responses can be up to 10 minutes long. So another thing that I work with my students, one of the first presenters talked about GarageBand and a couple of those tools. And so I'm going to introduce to you a program called Soundtrap. Soundtrap, if you think of it, Soundtrap is like GarageBand, but in the cloud. And very cool thing about Soundtrap is that it can be accessed on any device. It can be collaborative, right? And so you can invite people into the Soundtrap. See, I have some stuff up here right now. We're going to stop this share because we're going to hop into another screen. Stop that share. I'm going to choose another screen here. All right. Oh yeah, we're actually going to stay there. Okay. All right. So let's just go into what it looks like. I've got a couple things going on here for us today. So this imitation piece actually started. It started in a different program, but I brought it over to Soundtrap to mess around with it. And so basically, I wanted to load this load this project so you could see. You can collaborate with people. It's like the Google Docs also of music making software. So not only can you collaborate with people, you can be in video conference with people. And so that's kind of a real fun way to connect, right? So connect in an online space, and so that we're creating music. Let me see what project I pulled up here. All right, so that actually was born out of another piece of software, but there's actually some real fun things that you can do with that. Yes, I know, thank you. So that piece was actually born in another piece of software I'm going to share with you called Noteflight. All right, so Noteflight is music notation software that also exists in the cloud. And all right. So that piece was born over here. So this is Noteflight. That was completely written out, right? So that piece was written out. And then what I have students do when they work with the music notation and they respond. So basically what happened is I gave this melody line, and then the students kind of create this accompaniment. Bonus points, bonus tracks to those people can guess what was going on in this. It's a version of a crab cannon. I don't know if you can see that. So basically what I can do with Noteflight is I can take a score, and just like a Google Doc, you can send copies of these scores out, and each one of your students get them, and then they can arrange their own piece. They can also, as a teacher, you can also set it up where you can collaborate. So multiple students could be working on this at once. A really great example of a teacher up in Northern California, he's a vocal teacher. And so what he did was he put a head tune for his jazz choir in a Noteflight score. And then he made a group. And then each one of the students were responsible for arranging the piece in Noteflight. So it was something that they were working on together in a sort of the online notation piece. But then it was also, they'd come back into sort of the real space and they would rehearse it and figure it out. So it's, the analogy that we're using here today is a lot like the Google Docs of music notation and music making software packages. All right, so I do want to give you an example of what a student. I want to play this piece because this piece is very dear to my heart, but it's an idea of a remix. And so we found a MIDI file So you can go to your favorite MIDI file site and find MIDI files, and you can actually upload them into Soundtrap. And then this is what she did with Dido's Lament. It's a great track. All of these, and like I said, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take this site. I'm going to pop it in our chat window. Here. I'm going to pop it in our chat window. That's my alarm. All right, so the site that I was working from today that has all of these fun tools and techniques, they're all here listed for you at the activities. Here's some fun tools like Chrome Music Lab and Groove Pizza that I would encourage you to play around with. These are the projects in the Google Doc that deal with the things that you heard today. And here are some tutorial videos that I made. All of the resources on all the software can be found at the resource page on these links. You just click them and they take you there. If you want to know what Doc Papa podcast, go check it out. I think my time's up.
Thank you, Chad. I appreciate that. And I am so grateful to all 5 of our panelists today for our first TED Talk. We'll be having another round of TED Talks at the end of May with 4 completely different presentations. But thank you all today for being here on Cinco de Mayo with us. And to our members who joined us today and or non-members, thanks for coming late today. Many of us wanted to be on the National ACDA and NATS webinar today at 2 o'clock. So thanks for adjusting your time. We've just got a minute or 2 left. So if you've got a question for any of our panelists, let us know. And as always, our webinar today will be posted up on the CCDA website. And that should be up by Friday as well. Next week, we have, who's up next week? Dr. Buddy James is joining us for Common and Not So Common Sense for Choral Directors, building our ensembles, our singers, and ourselves during challenging times. So I think I saw Buddy on here earlier. Thanks, Buddy, for doing that for us next week. And if there are no questions, then I think we get to go home early today. Cheers, everybody. Happy Cinco de Mayo. Have a great night. Be safe.